Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Akila Ka Ma'at, just a tad bit uh, late. Give me a second here. I wanted to come on because I just wanted you to know I'm here. Give me a second. I need to just do some things real quick. Okay. Uh, Give me a second. I got to make sure I'm on. I'm showing. Forgive me. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Give me a second here. Let me see if I'm on YouTube. I really look. Let me tell you, life is no joke right now. As many or some of you may know, I'm still dealing with the death of my father. It's still pretty fresh in my mind. It happened on Mother's Day. So I am just slightly discombobulated. So please forgive me and my discombobulation. All right. I'm trying not to be. Here we go. Let me see. Okay. All right, y'all. I got to get. Why am I hearing myself talk? That is so strange. Give me a second here because I'm on, and it keeps saying upcoming. Oh my goodness. Give me a second. I need to. Oh, I see what's happening here. I am. I was on. I was other place. Okay. All right. 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 I'm here. Yeah. So let's get to it. All right. Let's get to it. Um, let's get to it. Uh, I'm supposed to be having all these little, what do you call them? Directions from, for those of you who don't know, I'm like using Claude for, uh, for my, to help me develop my scripts fully out. And it just gives all these directions, which I appreciate, but that I'm not really used to having. Hey, give me a second here. Okay. Yes, I am live. Where is my YouTube? There's got to be a better way to do this, y'all. I'm telling you straight up. There's got to be a better way to do this. Uh, oh, was this a comment? All right. It's telling me to do comments. So I did it. All right. I believe I'm live. Y'all, I'm getting it together. Just hang with me here for a minute. Um, oh, where am I at? I'm so sorry, y'all. One day. One day I'll get it together. I knew my dad was ill, but I did not know it was going to impact me. I mean, I knew, look, I didn't want to get into all that, but I'm just trying to do some talk as I'm trying to negotiate all these little tidbits and directions I have here. But thank you, and welcome all beautiful souls. Look, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be alive in honor of my dad. Okay. I got something for y'all. I don't know why my mouth is lagging here, but I do have something. So welcome, 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 beautiful souls. And I am there. Let me see if I'm on Facebook. Trying to do two things at once. Who knows how it goes on Facebook? I don't know. Let's see. This is Restream here. I really don't see anything live happening here. But I'm just going to believe in, going to keep the faith. All right. So welcome, beautiful souls. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to come here. I don't know why I'm lagging like this, but I'm just going to keep it rolling. Before I say anything else, I just want to ask you to do one thing. Wherever you are, sitting, standing, half listening, take one slow breath in and a slightly longer breath out. In and then exhale. We're just doing one because what we are about to discuss requires you to be in your body, not racing ahead in your mind. Okay? As you know, or for those of you who are new, I am Dr. Akila Ka Ma'at, and this is part one of a three-part series that I'm calling the Critical Thinking Awakening for Spiritual Discernment. We're going live today and then Monday of next week and Wednesday. And by the end of these three sessions, you will understand something most spiritual teachers will never tell you. You cannot release what you cannot see. And you cannot see clearly without thinking clearly. Okay? Today's question is simple, but it cuts. What does it actually mean to think critically? And why has almost no one taught you? If you have a journal nearby, get it now. Pen to, okay? We're going to do real work today, all right? The live exercise will begin in about 30 minutes, so you have time to settle in. And if you're here now or later watching, drop one word in the chat for what feels heaviest in your life right now. Okay? I'll keep an eye out. We'll return to it during the live exercise. Okay? So, what critical thinking actually is and what it isn't. I want to begin by clearing the ground, okay? Because most people, when they hear critical thinking, they imagine something cold, skeptical, and maybe even hostile to spirituality, okay? That is not what critical thinking is, especially from somebody who has situated themselves in academia for decades. Critical thinking is part of that growth for my particular walk in academia. And so it's sort of like just a thing that I do. But it's interesting that it could be seen as hostile to spirituality when in fact, critical thinking is the disciplined practice of examining beliefs, assumptions, sources, and patterns before accepting them as true. Critical thinking is the disciplined practice of that examination, okay? It asks simply, where does this come from? Who taught me this? Does it hold up when I test it against my own, your own experience? Whose voice am I hearing when I think this thought? So in my work, I ask in the recognition phase for people to gain recognition of patterns and emotional attachments of things that are no longer serving them in their life. I even help facilitate that with my somatic metaphysical tarot system. As I have stated in many of my videos, that the recognition radar is a collaborative process. And even though I am a psychic and spiritualist, critical thinking is applied in my work from me with my clients. But I've noticed a lot of clients are not situated in the practice of critical thinking. And so I want to bring this examination, this critical thinking examination, to the forefront, because it is critical, not only for spiritual discernment, but also to discern what works in life and what does not. So critical thinking is not the opposite of spirituality. I'd like to say it is a partner of intuition in some ways. Okay? Without critical thinking, you cannot tell the difference between inner guidance and inherited conditioning, social conditioning. And inherited is also, the conditioning that we have from society, but the inherited part for me is really what we take on as something that's always been done this way through our generational knowing, ancestral knowing, and social conditioning, and all that implies religious, school, when you're young, family, all of these things that condition us, and then just policies, laws, society, the discourses that we hear over and over and over again about certain things, also part of this social conditioning. Okay, so you cannot tell the difference between inner guidance and inherited conditioning. You cannot tell the difference between a calling and a compensation. You cannot tell the difference between a true signal and an echo of something old that just sounds like a signal. Okay? So, let's name what critical thinking is not. Because most of you have been taught the wrong definition. 1, critical thinking is not cynicism. Cynicism assumes everything is false. Critical thinking asks, is this true? And stays present for the answer. 2, critical thinking is not contrarianism. Contrarianism, contrariness to the contrary, contrarianism opposes for the sake of just opposing. Contrary nature just opposes everything. Critical thinking examines because it wants clarity. Critical thinking examines for the sake of clarity, not to just be contrary to everything or to be cynical about everything. 3, critical thinking is not overthinking, okay? It is not. Overthinking is anxiety in costume, okay? Critical thinking has a rhythm and it knows when to stop. And 4, and this one is the spiritual person's blind spot. Critical thinking is not intellectual defense, okay? Building an airtight argument to protect your identity is not thinking critically. An airtight argument to protect who you believe you are. That's not thinking critically. It's not intellectual defense, critical thinking. That is protecting the ego with a level of sophistication. You can throw people off the track with this intellectual defense. Ego with sophistication. Excuse me, little Red Bull here. I'm not doing advertisement. Okay. So I want to land one line before we move on. Write this down if you're journaling. Critical thinking is not the opposite of spiritual development. It is the discernment muscle that makes spiritual development real instead of performative. Let me say this again. Critical thinking is not the opposite of spiritual development. It is the discernment muscle that makes spiritual development real instead of performative. So, why weren't you taught? And for me, you know, the Scarcity-Pain Matrix of fear, right? Now, here's a question I really want you to sit with in this segment. If critical thinking is this important for awakening, for discernment, for self-sovereignty, why did almost no one teach you? And the thing about why did almost no one teach you, people will push back believing that they know or believe they are critical thinkers. And that's important to have that belief of self. However, until I went to college, no one taught me about critical thinking. I didn't go to college until I was close to my 30s. Okay? So if I'm not getting this, then schools are worse. Now we got generations of people who don't really have a critical thinking muscle unless they, you know, really participated in some type of academic program that forced that type of examination. Okay? So why did almost no one teach you? Look, we went to school, as I just said. Maybe you went to church. How about therapy? And then perhaps reading those, but almost every spiritual book on the shelf. That was me at one time. And somehow this skill, the one that makes all the others trustworthy, somehow no one ever sat down and said, let me show you how to examine this belief. And that is not an accident. It is not. As I have pontificated regularly, we live inside what I call the Scarcity-Pain Matrix. And then I did a little add-on now, the Scarcity-Pain Matrix of fear, this 3D reality, which I talked about with the soulless. That's another reason why I'm doing this. Critical thinking, spiritual discernment, you know, it sort of came to me as the next level of work we need to do, considering all the things that are happening, not only, you know, in this 3D reality, but in the avowal of a spirituality that is being heard in every channel in every way, with people talking and offerings to awaken folks. So we live inside that scarcity-pain matrix of fear, that 3D reality that we inhabit. And if you're new to my work, this is where the central frame of the power of release. This is the central frame of the power of release. This is the grounding of where the power of release evolved. The scarcity-pain matrix of fear, as I said, is the 3D reality where unresolved pain and learned scarcity quietly organizes a person's identity, purpose, emotions, and patterns before that person even realizes it. The matrix is not loud. But if you go back to my last video on the Solace, my last live stream, the matrix is getting very loud. Okay? But it usually does not announce itself. And it does not need to. The scarcity-pain matrix of fear does not need to announce itself. The matrix only needs you to stop asking questions, or to be conditioned in ways so you don't ask questions, don't know what questions to ask, right? So the scarcity-pain matrix of fear needs you to stop asking questions so that you cannot examine where your beliefs came from, to stop noticing the gap between what you authentically feel inside and what you've been conditioned to perform. And here is the line I want you to take home this morning. Most mental health and behavioral challenges are symptoms of incongruence, the gap between authentic expression and social conditioning. The deeper the gap, the louder the symptom. And for those of you who have not entered into at least my ebook, The Power of Release, I really go into depth around this conditioning and my release of it. Link in bio. Okay. So that anxiety that wouldn't quit for me, that won't quit for you, often is not random. It is incongruence. That depression that returns in cycles, for me at one time, and perhaps for you, often is not weakness. It is incongruence. The same relationship pattern showing up in different costumes. It's possible over and over and over again in different ways you perform yourself. So if you see that relationship showing up in different costumes, that is incongruence. Okay? Critical thinking is how you begin to close the gap, that incongruence gap. Because critical thinking is how you find out which belief is actually yours and which ones were installed. Yeah, installed in our brain and in our body, our nervous system, our psyche, everywhere installed. Just takes over everything about us. Okay. So if critical thinking is how you find out which beliefs are actually yours and which ones are installed, Why don't schools, or why didn't schools teach this? Why don't most religious traditions teach this? Why does mainstream culture not teach this? Because critical thinkers are harder to control. They're harder to sell to. They are harder to shame into being compliant. They ask, the critical thinkers ask, whose interests does this belief serve? Who benefits when I am believing this? A person who thinks critically cannot keep inside the 3D matrix as easily. You know, the box that we get shoved into, right? Get in that box. Stay in that box, in the box. We used to always say people are in a box. Couldn't think for themselves. It wasn't really nice all the time, but the box was a metaphor for this conditioning. Look, a person who thinks critically cannot be easily oppressed or kept inside the low frequency of the matrix. So we are trained out of critical thinking early. And we are rewarded for compliance instead. We learn to memorize, to perform, to please, to prove. We do not learn to truly discern. That is the conditioning environment you are awakening inside of, spiritually awakening inside of, particularly in this 4D bridge, my phase. Please go back to my latest to understand the 4D bridge phase. Okay. And when we are awakened spiritually, which I believe is all awakening, is spiritual. Okay. You can judge it later, low frequency, high frequency, but you know, we are awakening inside of the matrix. And it can feel very disorienting with all the things that are happening. They're happening for us to go, oh, I want something better. Right? You are doing soul work, your spiritual development. You are doing soul work using a mind that has never taught to question what it receives. It's just, no, I don't want that. I want this. I want that. This lines up with me. Why? Critical thinking would ask, why do I want this? Why do I not want that? Why do I situate myself so easily in this? And why is it so hard for me to sit over there? Right? And stay present for the answer. So today, we begin page 1 of critical thinking, just like page 1 of recognition radar, is seeing what is and was already there. This is my first time doing a live exercise. Look, we're going to find one belief that you have been carrying as truth right now. Find one belief inside yourself that you carry as truth. And we are going to look at it for the first time, honestly, without shame, without rushing to fix it. So, the unexamined belief. We're going into the live exercise now. I want you to take your journal, your eyes. Well, first of all, sit comfortably. Even myself included. I'm sitting on the edge of my shoe. Oop, there's something spilling on my shirt. Sit comfortably. Okay. Take a couple of deep breaths. All right. Take your journal. Your eyes can stay open or closed, whatever supports you. We're going to move slowly. The goal is not to fix anything. The goal is to see clearly with your critical thinking, discernment. So recognition is not a failure, okay? Recognition is evidence that you are becoming conscious of that which was previously running automatically inside of you. So, step one, let's settle the body really now and first. Because if the nervous system is flooded, we cannot observe. We can only react. Take 5 deep breaths with me. Inhale 4, exhale for 6. Not perfect, just study. Okay? In 1, exhale. 2, inhale. Exhale. 3, inhale. Exhale. 4, inhale. Exhale. And 5, inhale. Hold it. Exhale. Okay. Good. Good. In this mindfulness space you're inhabiting in this moment, I want you to complete one of these 3 sentences. Don't think it through. Let the first one arrive. Trust whatever comes first, even if it's fleeting. Grab it. If it's fleeting, first thing that comes to your mind. Part of intuition development. Again, I want you to complete one of these 3 sentences. I am not blank enough. Write in your journal. This is your sentence. Complete it. I am not blank enough. Second, if this resonates, I am always blank. Write in your journal. If this is your sentence, I always blank. Forgive me. So the first one is I am not blank enough. The second one, if you choose this, I am always blank. The last one, if this gravitates, or if you gravitate toward this, write it down. People like me don't. Fill in the blank if this phrase resonates with you. People like me don't, and fill the blank in. Don't get convoluted. A little phrase, a word. So the 3 phrases, one of which you can choose from, whatever resonates, so you can do all 3. I am not blank enough. I always blank. People like me don't blank. Don't sit in it. First thing that comes to your head, write it down. If you're erasing something, stop erasing, put back whatever was there. So yes, one more time. Write down whatever comes first in your thoughts, even if it sounds harsh to you or to anybody else, even if it sounds small, even if it sounds old, even if you think saying it is somehow awful or reveals something untoward about yourself. All that's a lie. I am blank enough. I am always blank. People like me don't blank. Step 3. Now we trace. 4 questions. Take your time. I will read each one with space between. Whichever phrase or whatever blank you filled in, whatever phrase you chose in step 2, we're tracing the source of what you wrote in that blank. First trace. When is the first time you can remember believing this about yourself? Put in first person. When is the first time I can remember believing this about myself? Two, whose voice do I hear when I think this thought? Whose voice do you hear when you think that? Third trace. Who benefits when I keep believing this? Who benefits when you keep believing what you documented for the phrase, I am not blank enough. I am always blank. People don't like me blank. One of those 3 you're using to trace the source. I'll go back over those 4 questions related to name the belief, okay? We're tracing the source. 1, when is the first time you can remember believing what you wrote about yourself? 2, whose voice do you hear when you think the thought that you wrote about yourself? 3, who benefits when I keep believing what you wrote about yourself in filling in the blank. And 4, what evidence? This is the big one. The last question. What evidence have I gathered to confirm this belief? And what evidence have I ignored? What evidence have you gathered to confirm the belief you hold about yourself? In those phrases, you had to fill the blank in one of those phrases. And what evidence have you quietly ignored, or have I quietly ignored? And I would also say too, now that I'm thinking about the 4th question, which is extremely important to answer. You can only ignore something if you know it exists. And so while some folks may have quietly ignored evidence to confirm the belief they hold about themselves, others may not really know what evidence there would be to confirm. Evidence. And I'll talk about evidence later. But what information have you gathered to confirm the belief you have about yourself? And what evidence have you quietly ignored, if you're ignoring, loudly ignored? And how about this? Where would you get information to confirm what it is you believe about yourself? And is that the only source of evidence that exists? And if not, name some more. I know I'm making this 3rd step. Trace the source, a little more detail, but you have the 4 major questions. When is the first time you can remember believing that about yourself? Whose voice do you hear when you think what you wrote? The belief. Whose voice do you hear when you think that belief, think that thought? Who benefits when you keep believing what you wrote about yourself? And 4, what evidence have you gathered to confirm this? And what evidence has been ignored? So if you've been working through this process with me now, look at what's on your page. That belief, the one you just traced, has been organizing your life. It has shaped what you've chased, what you've avoided, what you've performed, and what you've protected. And until this moment, you were inside that belief. Now you are looking at it. That is critical thinking. That is the beginning of discernment. You do not have to shame the belief to outgrow it. Bad, bad, bad. Don't do that. But you do have to see it truthfully. You do not have to shame the belief to outgrow it. You do have to see it truthfully. Some of you are looking at what you wrote down and are thinking, that doesn't feel like a big deal. Or should I have written something more profound? Okay. I want you to hear what I'm getting ready to say right now. That belief, the belief that runs your life, or the beliefs that run your life, they're usually not dramatic. No, no, no. They are quiet. That is why they survive. The loud ones get questioned. The quiet ones get obeyed. Let me give you examples of how conditioning hides in plain sight, including inside spirituality. Okay? I have to overproduce to matter. It looks like ambition, right? Often it is the fear of being irrelevant with a productivity costume on it. I cannot relax until I know where I stand. We're looking at where conditioning hides. I cannot relax until I know where I stand. This looks like discernment, as we're talking about today. It's usually hypervigilance from earlier survival modalities, identities, a pattern, survival pattern. I'm just being open. We hear this. That looks like spiritual maturity. I'm just being open. Sometimes it is the avoidance of saying a no, a hard no. Another place where conditioning hides. Everything happens for a reason. It looks like surrender, right? It looks like surrender, but sometimes is a bypass. It's a bypass, refusing to examine what actually needs to be examined. Everything happens for a reason. Let it go. Here's another saying where conditioning hides. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be negative. Looks like somebody's vibrating real high. But it is often a conditioning override that prevents real critical thinking, real disagreement, and real anger. It pushes these things away at the detriment of the individual. And it seems like high vibration. You know, conditioning rarely arrives wearing a sign that says conditioning. And there is a reason why when people are told the social reality, this 3D reality is an illusion, we're conditioned, you know, there's like a visceral reaction to that. People don't want to even sit in that for a second. So they're crazy. This is where I live. If that is how you feel, then perhaps the examination of the visceral reaction regarding you as being conditioned to fit the goals of this society. Individualism. That lie, it's a lie. You're an individual because you've been clothed or cloaked in an ideology that wants to separate everybody. So it's not about This is my mind. I have my thoughts. I know what's going on. It's about separate and manage in place. Okay? Critical thinking moves you outside of that management. So if you are having a visceral reaction to questioning your beliefs or believing that you are conditioned by the society, which you absolutely are, those need to be examined. Conditioning can sound like wisdom. It can sound like maturity. And it definitely can sound like, spirituality. And that is why we need critical thinking. Not to dismiss the wisdom. No, we don't want to dismiss it, but to test it. We need to learn how to do experiments and tests in our own lives when all these experiments and tests created this reality, but we're not even taught that. That's such specialized knowledge. Putting something to the test. It's not just for scientists, researchers like myself. Experimentation does not reside in the ivory tower or in federal institutes. You have that power as well. So you test it to see whether it is a calling real or whether it is compensation. Because in our 3D reality, money, money, money rules. And for many people, it is big G God. And for most, it's definitely a little G God. Okay? And so, what I will share is I will just disclose. I've disclosed a lot. So the one time that I mistook a conditioned belief for spiritual truth in my own life, I'm going to go back to the very early conditioning that lasted until I was 18. And as I've talked on many of these live streams and videos, I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. Okay. I'm not bashing Jehovah's Witnesses. People believe what they believe. Jehovah's Witnesses teach you were born sinful. You were unworthy. You don't deserve peace and hope. Only if God decides that you get it, you're nothing. Can't participate in politics. Not supposed to interact with anybody outside of the Jehovah's Witness circle because they're all worldly. And so the belief that I had ingrained with me is that I am not worthy enough. If your God says that you're unworthy to the point where you don't even know if there's an afterlife for you in the resurrection or the new world, and tells you at birth you're sinful. It was implanted within me early on. I am not worthy enough. And I carried that conditioning from that installation for most of my adult life until I began to examine it and see it. So when is the first time? Put the trace question to me. I am not worthy enough. I'll put the questions to myself. When is the first time I can remember believing this about myself? Let me say 3 to 5 years of age within the Kingdom Hall. Whose voice do I hear when I think this thought? Wow. At a certain point, I'm sure it was associated with God's voice, the voice that's primarily attached is that of the elders who gave the messages in the Kingdom Hall. Who benefits when I keep believing this? First of all, society overall, because as a Black woman, I'm really embodying what the society thinks I am, unworthy. So society benefits from having me dim myself and mute myself and have that conditioned early on. So I step into adulthood like that. The Jehovah's Witnesses benefit when I keep believing this because I stay in the mix. I proselytize door to door to people telling them they're not enough. So I am working to propagate the message which benefits the industry of Jehovah's Witness. And what evidence have I gathered to confirm this? And what evidence have I quietly ignored? The evidence that I gathered to confirm this in those years, all the material that the Jehovah's Witnesses put out. The evidence that I thought I collected was the way in which people interacted with me, which of course was me projecting my unworthiness onto them, and hence it was being bounced back to me. And what evidence did I quietly ignore? I hate to sound what people will say egotistical, but my own spectacularness. I mean, professional dancer, going to school, going to performing arts school, going to New York, doing things, being worthy, people seeing me. Of course, it was all external validation, which is a very problem there. But the evidence of that, and then going to college and getting my PhD, and then all the entrepreneurial things that I did in between. I quietly ignored all that was saying about me. You are worthy, Dr. Akila Ka Ma'at. I ignored it. At that time was Jennifer. You're worthy, Jennifer, right? I ignored the evidence that I saw. So that is a little disclosure and how you can begin to trace the source of your belief. Some of you may be asking, what if what I wrote down doesn't feel like a big deal? Hear me again. It doesn't have to feel dramatic or huge, mind-blowing, phenomenal. The quiet beliefs are the ones running you without your permission or in your ignorance. And ignorance is not a bad word, It just is a state of being until it is not. And that's why in Recognition Radar, we look at these beliefs, these things that have been cycling in your life. And some of you are wondering, how is this different from therapy? I am not a licensed clinical therapist. I mean, I've been trained in all that, but I'm not. Therapy and critical thinking absolutely overlap. Let's be clear about that. But critical thinking is something you carry into every moment of your spiritual practice, not just in therapy with your therapist. and not with you being the problem or the issue that needs to be fixed. Critical thinking is something you carry into every moment of your life and your spiritual practice. Absolutely. It is the discernment that says, is this insight or is this an echo? And critical thinking can even be used to examine the effectiveness of your therapist without just reacting with visceral reactions. I don't like this person, or oh my God, I love them, they're great. Why? Some of you are noticing resistance right now. I know it. Maybe a tightness in the chest, maybe wanting to shut off this live stream feeling. That is not a problem in any way, shape, or form. That's information, right? That's data, your data. Resistance often shows up at the doorway of recognition, particularly when you're not having a guide, like in a one-to-one intimate setting, take you through it to manage and balance that resistance, right? But we don't want you to ignore, I don't want you to ignore that resistance. You have to question it. Why does it show up when you are striving to recognize what is no longer serving you? Okay. Look, don't track resistance in a way that has it ballooning. Okay. You don't argue with it. You sit with it. And then you may, once you get out of that visceral resistance modality, put some questions to that resistance. If you have a one sentence reflection on what came up during this exercise, drop it in the chat and I'll read what comes through. You know, I never really get a chance to see. Yeah. One day we'll have some people in the chat, but this work is hard. And you know, I'm gonna get to a type of gal, right? And this work is asking people to do stuff that could rock their world. Some people are just not ready. And for those of us, or those of you who want to begin to peel back the layers of yourself in a spiritual journey, those who are ready, motivated, this is for you. So here's what I want you to take with you as I close today. The belief you wrote down, that's not yours. None of them are. Not originally, right? It was installed by something or someone, and you have quietly been obeying it and aligning your life with it, resonating with a belief that is not your own. Resonance with it. And it resonates in your life journey, and it will resonate in your spiritual journey. You know, the act of seeing is the first act of release. As I said before, you cannot release what you cannot see. Now, Monday, we will go further. We're going to talk about why so many spiritual people mistake their conditioning for intuition, and how to tell the difference before it costs you years. And that is part 2, mistaking conditioning for intuition. And Monday, it'll be the same time as today at 10:30. Wednesday, we go into part 3, which is become ungovernable. The daily practice that make you the authority of your own spiritual journey. The daily practices that make you self-sovereign of your own spiritual journey. Until then, I want you to keep your journal close. Watch what repeats. What's the signal? Name the belief, trace the source, and then discern meaning. Because at the end of the day, and I can't imagine anybody watching this would not want, we all want to feel the power of release. Okay? So that's the end of the stream. Thank you for whoever was watching today. This was a lot. This was a whole lot. And so I know I gave prompts for the chat and to write, but please comment, like, and subscribe. The comments help other people to know that this work is not in isolation, okay? And that for many of us throughout our lives, we're trying desperately to gain understanding. Hence the reason why psychic advising is a booming business. Because instead of critical thinking skills, we want to go to some magic knowing so that you understand everything. And the thing that clients don't understand is that many psychic advisors have, many, not all, have well-honed critical thinking skills. Look, life is heavy. It could be a heavy lift, as I'm experiencing now with the death of my father, and just sitting in the worst low frequency vibration I have sat in for like 2 years and trying desperately to let that go or to let it resolve, but I have to sit in it in order to release it. And that's just one example of the pain. And the reason why that's pain is because of the way we're conditioned to see death, right, as the end. But life can be fundamentally challenging. And to do this work requires time that many people do not want to give. And that is a problem in and of itself, that many of us will not give time to understand who we are. Even if it's just that. I know not everybody has money to go to therapy or has insurance these days to go to therapy, but there's so many ways to discern what is operating within you that you didn't put in there. But first, there is the urgency to understand that there was stuff put into you. Things that are not aligned with your authentic resonance and that stifle your creative expression, your capacity to be, just be. And I know because I have been there and been through it. I grieved it, Power of Release book. I'm grieving again my dad, and that's a lot of stuff that I have to sit in and notice to begin to release. Because my father was the one who introduced me to, was Jehovah's Witness his whole life. But I just want you to know that I'm here. I understand how challenging it is, how I lived a life until my 50s without ever doing any deep work on me or understanding me or the beliefs that I held. And so it is important to me to share all that I know through the power of release, because we all should understand how to realize our best selves. And we can't realize our best selves, and that is our authentic self, if we are just full of conditioning that we resist looking at, and that we give over to the preacher, that we give over to the teacher, that we give over to everybody else. What about us? What about you? What about you? What do you want in your life? What is it to just be that person who's been trained and who is fed a continual diet that reifies that training? Then I'm using these words: training, conditioned, installed. This is not some pseudoscience. This is psychology. It's definitely spirituality. This is not religion. This is opening you up to everything that is possible for you. So, if you're engaging in this video, do the exercise. See what happens. Come back for Monday, part 2, and then Wednesday next week, part 3. And there'll be much more insight and information. But the recognition radar activity, one that I use, it's also, I'm gonna put up a PDF file of the exercises in my link in bio. And that way, perhaps when people come back to the live stream, they will have the practice guide that I'm using here, which is a really good reflection of the tools I utilize in phase 1. And phase 1 of recognition is the most important of all the phases. So, comment, like, algorithm, subscribe, please, so you can get notifications of all the wonderful things that we have going on with our videos and stuff like that. I always got to do a little business at this point. I mean, that title is really long. So what I'm going to do now is let you know, you want to get to my link in bio and you don't feel like going to the site, I mean, on the channel or whatever, I don't know where you're looking at it. That's a QR code to link in bio. So many practice guides there. That is where I'm going to put up this recognition radar practice that we're doing for this critical thinking series. Okay. QR code, take you directly to link in bio. All right. The next one I want to really pull out is the spring surprise promo is still going on. That QR code takes you directly to the webpage that has the eligible sessions for which, if you're a new client, you receive 75% off. And there is a session that gives you a taste of what it is to do the recognition radar with the somatic metaphysical tarot reading that I developed. Okay. Yeah, so that's there. And I think that's it. For those of you who want to know a little bit more about my journey and my recognition radar and how it took me so long to get there, this is my the book of my journey. This is The Power of Release. It's my story, but it gives you an understanding of where I'm coming from. And if you really want to delve into the Scarcity-Pain Matrix as I understood it in my career, you might want to go to my link in bio and check out the Ivory Tower Hypocrisy. Power of release evolved from my needing to detach from a hostile or from a setting that was just no longer resonating with anything about me. This is the ebook. Ebook has a little bit less than the paperback. It's still a short book. But right now it's $5.99. Ebook, I think the paperback is $9.99. I believe that this QR code will take you directly to Amazon to purchase that. And I'm going to tell you, we definitely appreciate, your time here, right? Everything that you give by coming here, okay? And look, if there is anything that you would like me to cover, to address, to tap into, anything, put a comment on it, send me an email. If you have a question, send it to me and I will address it. I am here for you. So, on that note, I'm trying to end them a little bit more quickly. Please, again, comment, like, subscribe. And, I just want to say thank you, beautiful souls, for being here today. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions about this recognition radar, about the exercise we did today, please email me or provide a comment. I will respond. And I'll respond in the community, which is not evident visually. It's there. These questions can build community around spiritual development, growth, and the support on spiritual journeys, whether it's with the power of release or not. Okay? Thank you so much. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.